What is up, guys? It is time for another quarantine cast. My name is Shane Miller, and I'm the youth director of First Presbyterian Church in Lake Wales. This morning, we have Cami Schulze on the show, the youth pastor of Impact Church. For more information about First Presbyterian Church in Lake Wales, go to www.fpclw.org. What's up, quarantine squad? We've made it through another week of quarantine. So excited about that. Today on the show, we have a special guest. Her name is Cami Schulze, and she is the youth pastor of Impact Church. Cami, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody.
So you might not know this, but the youth pastors of Lake Wales actually meet about once a month to pray for each other or to plan community events. So I see Cami just about every month in that group, and she's been a huge encouragement for me in my ministry. I'm super thankful for her. Cami, I want to ask you, how long have you been doing youth ministry, and what got you into youth ministry?
Holy cows, for how long? So which time? So Troy and I started doing youth ministry of some sort, working with kids, probably back in 2000. So yes, those of you that are doing the math, it is 2020. So somehow I have been in youth ministry for 20 years now. We started out as Sunday school teachers for youth, and then I was in the Assemblies of God. We have this thing called Fine Arts where you use your gifts and talents to minister, and I was the director over that for a little bit. But probably 2001, 2002, Troy and I both stepped up as co-youth pastors together, and we did that until 2005. And there was just some things going on in our lives. We needed to step away and just not be in lead ministry for a little while, and that broke our hearts completely because we just love working with the kids, college age, all the way down to middle school. Just love every ounce of it. So at 2010, we stepped back up as the youth pastors together, and then the ministry was just growing, and they needed somebody to take on the full thing. And so the pastor looked at me and said, well, I was like, yes, I do. And at that point, I was doing a lot of the ministry aspects of it anyway. So I just took up the full gauntlet, and I've just been loving it. I love the fact that I get to hang out with the kids. I literally get my energy from the teenagers, like just being around them, just being a part of their culture. I feel like they keep us on the pulse of our community, of what's going on. And I've just always just loved hanging out and being with those kids because they're innovators, they're moving, they're shaking, they're just fun, even though they're awkward and all those wonderful things. I just have loved doing youth ministry.
So many of the students at our church at First Pres, they've grown up in a Christian environment. They've grown up going to church. But my understanding is that that was not always the case for you. I've tried to do my research. Have I gotten it right?
You have gotten it right, Shane. I hate to admit it, but I was a heathen. But I was definitely not raised in a Christian home. Raised by good parents, just wasn't raised in church. In our neighborhood, there was a small church there that some of the kids went to, so I started going. And at the age of 13, I call it praying the prayer of fireproof. I didn't want to go to hell. So I prayed the prayer, but really didn't understand the relationship and the discipleship behind that. Then fast forward, I was going to school, making good grades. I was just your typical teenager. I started dating my husband at 16. We've been together for a really long time. And when you're 16 and not saved, you're not always making the best choices. So we were going to church. Sunday I'd be in church. I'm like, we're not doing this anymore. We can't keep acting like this. And then here we are still doing what we did because we just didn't have anyone discipling us. We just didn't know any better, really. So fast forward, and we got married in 95. I got pregnant with my daughter. And prior to that moment, I was really searching before I got pregnant. I worked with a bunch of Christian women. I was a full-time hairdresser at the time. And I had seen them doing their thing, but I also was seeing some other stuff going on around me, just the spiritual aspect of people's lives. And I had been in church and I just hadn't seen God move. So I thought maybe I was missing it. Maybe I wasn't seeing what I should be seeing. So I started looking. And when I say looking, I was really kind of starting to look into some very dark areas. Like I was looking into astrology. I was looking into different things of that nature. Started to look into the tarot cards a little bit. Didn't get into them, just kind of starting to look. And at that time, I had a client come to me who was involved in Wiccan. And so he had come to me and said, hey, I've just been watching you and your business grow, and I've got something that could be good for you and your business. Well, I'm a businesswoman. I want my business to be great. And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. So he gave me a book and told me not to let anybody else see it because they may not understand. Well, anytime you got someone who says other people aren't going to understand, that's usually a red flag. But I was like, okay. So I took it home, and when I got the book home, it was all about Wiccan. And I was like, what in the world? And I just was so caught off guard by it and so shocked because everybody else I'd ever talked to had talked about church stuff, the different denominations. And I had been looking in areas, but had never met someone who actually was walking in those areas until that moment. And I ended up giving the guy his book back because I didn't feel comfortable. And so little did I know that there was some women that I worked with that were praying for me at the time. And one of the ladies had invited me to church with her. And I was like, okay, I can look. It's going to hurt to go to another church service, whatever. And at that point, I had my daughter. She was born in April of 97. The end of July, I went to church, and that was the very first time ever I had felt the presence of God. And I think it was because I was looking, and thankfully there was people praying, so I didn't go into the dark area that I very easily could have. But that was in July of 97 was when I made that real life connection with Jesus. It wasn't just religion. It wasn't just going through the do's and following the lists of, what keeps you good. It was the true heart connection with Jesus at that point. And God has just really blessed me with that since then. It's been a roller coaster of learning, as I think everybody has in their walk with Christ. It's been a cool journey.
Sometimes when you grow up in church, I can relate to this. I grew up in a Christian environment with my parents discipling me from a wee young age. Sometimes when you grow up in the church, you can kind of take things for granted. The way that we do things are just normal for us. But I'm sure as someone who wasn't always Christian, there had to be some things about church that took some getting used to. Can you think of any examples of that on the spot?
Probably the expectation of the way you talked and acted and dressed. Not that I was horrible before, but when you're raised in the world, modesty wasn't necessarily a big thing that was taught. Sometimes I felt like, and this maybe just because I was super sensitive coming in as a, living in the world person, sometimes some of the ladies at the church wouldn't always say it in such a great way. But over time, I learned that, modest is hottest. Vocabulary, I had to work on that a little bit. There were some words that I used to use that just aren't appropriate. But as a whole, I think the church did really well of loving me through that season, if I could say that.
So a lot of times youth group students, they can think about the youth group as, this is my youth group. Mm-hmm. And having outsiders come in who might not know the vocabulary, might not know the rules, the guidelines that they need to abide by. What are some ways that our students can be gracious and loving like your church was to you?
I think the thing that is best is, especially for those who are church, this is something I watch a lot of my own students struggle with in our youth ministry. We'll have someone come in that, they haven't lived a Christian lifestyle. And they know it because they see them at school and they see how they're talking and acting and being. And well, as Jesus put it, well people don't need a doctor. He didn't come to make the well better. He came to help the sick. And I realize that they may not be the nicest sometimes, and maybe they do have a past. Oh my goodness. Maybe they've done some things that they, shouldn't. And sometimes they even put on this tough little front to kind of like, and I would just encourage our students to say, remember how Jesus loved on them. Jesus sat with the prostitutes and the tax collectors, which The tax collectors back then were bad guys. But yet Jesus sat and had dinner with them and loved them and accepted them. And that's where the Pharisees and the Sadducees missed it. That's where the religious people missed it. They didn't realize that it wasn't just them that Jesus was there for. It was for everybody. And I think we just need to just keep an account that if these people are willing to walk through our doors, which is a huge step in the first place, because they're going out of their comfort zone into a new area, which is uncomfortable, to just love on them and just be a friend. I remember I had this one girl, oh my gosh, little Southern Baptist friend, raised in a Christian home, and she was just so pure. It was just like, are you real? Like, are you a real person? Because it wasn't what I was used to. It was so weird to be there. But do you know that she probably had the biggest impact on me by just being a friend? Even when I was being stupid, she was still there for me. It meant a lot. And do you know, I'm still friends with her on Facebook. She and I still stay connected to this day. And that to me is what the church is supposed to be. I encourage our students, they may not dress like you yet. They may not talk like you yet. Yeah, we don't want them dropping the F-bombs in our youth services. That's probably not a good idea. But if you can just live your life in front of them and encourage them and love on them the way you are loved on and encouraged, because a lot of those students don't have that at home. A lot of those kids, they're acting like their environment that they're used to seeing. So I would just encourage the churched kids to not be like the Sadducees and Pharisees, to be like Jesus, to be a friend to those who need a friend.
Good stuff. Well, Cammie, thank you so much for coming on the Quarantine Cast.
Shane, I am so honored. You did tell me a while back that you were doing this, and I was like, why hasn't Shane invited me? Why am I not on his podcast? So I am so excited that I'm on your podcast.
Cammie, you have always been on the VIP list. Wait, the VIYP list, the very important youth pastor list. So thank you for finally coming on the show. Well, guys, thank you for checking in. As always, we miss y'all, and we hope you have an awesome week. I will catch y'all later on the next Quarantine Cast.